like to thank Equal Voice and all the people who are taking the time today to listen to this, because it is so vital. As the director of the only organization in Newfoundland and Labrador that deals specifically with survivors and victims of sexual violence. I use them interchangeably because I know people have different perceptions of them. It is really what we have seen is that some of the very measures that were put in place to mitigate the spread of the virus, such as lockdowns, social distancing, physical distancing, and other restrictions, actually increase the risk to such a vulnerable population. And it is really difficult because the increased isolation and difficulty accessing supports which have changed has, in a sense, sometimes encouraged perpetrators because they can act or and with impunity. Many people, particularly when it first started, were not sure if services were open, or if they were open, how could they access them? So there was initially a decrease in terms of people reaching out to our services, which include a 24-hour telephone, text, chat, support line, as well as accompaniment to the SANE nurse, which is the sexual examiner, sexual programming nurse examiner, as well as to the police. But what has happened since then, as we look at our stats, there has been a 30% increase in callers to our line, and many of them are repeat callers. And things that people, that these vulnerable individuals says, I wasn't sure if you were around, I didn't know if I could do it, or if we would be jeopardizing anyone. So many of the factors that truly were put in place has generated increased difficulties. In terms of other changes we have seen, it's not that there are new inequities, it's just that the inequities that were present are glaringly obvious now during the pandemic. We're looking at quality childcare at a reasonable cost. We're looking at transportation. We're looking at food insecurity. And all these are affected by the fact that many of the individuals who take care of families are women, and women tend to work in service industries, such as, again, childcare, tourism, or seasonal things. And those are the ones that have been significantly affected. And when that's affected, then taking care of family becomes that much more expensive, that much more distressing when they can't do that kind of stuff. In terms of what we have done here at the center, we have partnered with a number of organizations for things like grocery cards or gift cards or care packages, but they are just stopgap measures, which really says to us, we need to look at those things. The other issue is significant impact in terms of mental health. Again, that is an area where we really need to move forward. We need to ensure that it's accessible, that it is stable, receives stable funding, and that people can access it as long as they need it, versus you can go twice and then that's it. Because what we essentially do sometimes is create our own wait list. So there are so many things that came up during the pandemic that were glaringly obvious to the vulnerable population, and maybe become more obvious to a majority of people now. The other thing that has happened is that when people feel distressed, when there are more challenges, what I have heard from my friends of color is that some people feel freer, I guess, in a sense, to express their displeasure at someone because of the way they looked or their religion or anything that they're seen as different. And all those things then impact, I think, on the entire community, that we really do need to take those things into consideration, that when we put things in place, we need to look at it through intersectional lens, because it does have an impact. And it's the people who are impacted the most that really, if we can get support and buy-in from them, we can be surprised at what can be done to help facilitate, promote, help us get through this current pandemic.
And Sandra, I want to thank you and note that behind you, you have chosen to display an artistic production by one of the persons affected by this violence. And so you chose to honor her work behind you. Thank you so very much.